Commonly called Section 508, this amendment to the Rehabilitation Act requires that federal agencies make electronic information accessible to people with disabilities. But many agencies required to follow these guidelines don't know what that means. Today's video is designed to alleviate that confusion by taking a sample document step by step through the 508 conversion process at Vastec. Vastec is a digitization company that helps federal agencies make information accessible, searchable, and retrievable. Vastec has proven this through work at the highest government levels, including the Department of Defense, the General Services Administration, and the U.S. Treasury Department. In taking this tour, you'll not only see what it means to digitize a document and make it 508 compliant, you will also understand that 508 transformation results in benefits to all who use the information, not just people with disabilities. For our test, we've created this simple 5-page document. It includes a letter, a form, a newspaper article, a picture, and a table. This represents the wide variety of information types commonly processed during 508 transformation. To start the 508 process, we're going to take this document and we're going to give it to Joe Hall, who's going to tell us about scanning. Joe, what happens here?
Well, in scanning, first off, just want to go over, before we do start scanning, we do have to prep the files first. In that case, we're going to remove any type of staples, any sticky notes that might be covering any information so they can get all of their document, not half of the document. From there, we take and we'll place it into our scanner, which is a top-of-the-line scanner, does about 250 pages per minute, even with image processing in the background. We place it in here.
So if the files are properly prepped, I take it from this stage on, it's pretty automatic in terms of scanning.
Yes, scanning, as long as the prep is done correctly, is very smooth, very easy.
The next step in the process is image correction, or IC for short. Greg Costa is going to show us how that works. Greg, what do you do?
Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve the image from the scanning area where they've placed it into my own image correction folder. I'm going to open the file, and my primary responsibility at this point is to name the file for the client as requested by them. And the way I do that is this particular client has asked that the file be saved using a company name, last name of their contact person in the file, the first name, and the date. Conveniently, all the information was on this first page. So what I'm going to do at that point is I'm going to concentrate on looking at the page to consider the quality of them, their legibility, and whether they're going to make it through the rest of the processes, for example, in the OCR that later on down the line. Everything looks like it's pretty clear and it's clean, except for right here we've got a photograph or possibly a print that didn't scan very well. This has been done in a bitonal or a two-color black and white scan, and possibly I can go back over to the scanner and say, can you give me a better image of this, simply by doing a grayscale scan or something like that.
We sent the picture back to scanning. Now it's come back to Greg. Greg, what does the new file look like?
Well, he's scanned it back in a grayscale, and as you can see, we've got a lot more detail.
So now this is the file that is going to continue on, not the old one, correct?
That's correct. It'll move on with the rest of the pages. One more thing I'm going to do with this image, though, is I'm going to change the orientation so that the client doesn't have to turn their head to actually see it, and I can just turn it 90 degrees to the left. Now we've got the image facing that way. Now we turn to view. View is very important in the 508 process because it makes our document understandable to people who cannot see it and have to use screen readers, people who are blind. Kenny has pulled up a W-2 form to show how this happens. Now, when most of us look at a W-2 form, our eyes automatically go down to the bottom where it says W-2. But a person using a screen reader won't understand that this is a W-2 unless we've made it 508 compliant and we've put it through View. Kenny, explain how View works.
If I were to grab the entire form, the OCR would pick up all the text. However, the order would not be correct. It would read from top to bottom, left to right. So instead of starting at Form W-2, it would start at A control number. Now that's not very helpful, so what I can do is manipulate the program and have it pick up W-2 first.
And so by breaking this up, every individual box you put in there, you're basically making a sequence in which the screen reader will follow.
Correct. So it would start off with W-2, wage and tax statement, and so forth. And from then on I can follow the form in alphabetical or numerical order so that the form itself will make sense.
Now Kenny, I notice we're working with a form here. Is view and read order only important forms or all the documents?
This is actually good for other types of documents as well. I can bring up another example. This is a newspaper article, and if I were to do a full zone on it, this would also read incorrectly. It would start off the title, and then it would read left to right.
So it wouldn't break it up in columns, it would go straight across all 3 columns.
Exactly. So what I can do is section it off into columns, and that way the OCR will pick up in the correct order, and it would make sense after this.
So in this case, you've set up 4 zones, the headline, and then the 3 columns.
Correct.
Now we've used View to set the proper read order for text, but what about our picture of Abraham Lincoln? Is there any processing to be done there?
Yes, we can. As you can see, there's no text in this picture here, but what I can do is make a figure zone, and the screen reader will read whatever I type, whatever I tell it to say, as soon as it gets to this page. So for example, I would just write picture of Abraham Lincoln.
Because, of course, someone who can't see that has no idea what that is a picture of.
Correct. And then when it gets to this point, the screen reader will read out exactly what I type.
Now we've moved back into the server room. It's a little bit noisy back here because of the fans, but this is a critical part of the process. OCR, Optical Character Recognition. Kenny, tell us about that.
Sure. This is our OCR program, and what it does is to determine what the characters should be in the text and the letter.
How long does it take to run our 5-page document through? I imagine it's pretty quick.
Right. It's pretty much about, I'd say, a second an image. So about 5 seconds total for a 5-page document. As
powerful and effective as the OCR process is, it can't catch everything. That's why we have Verify as the next step. Kenny, tell us what happens in Verify.
Sure. In the Verify process, we would go through and fix the correction that the OCR had trouble interpreting or mistakes that it made. In this case, it forgot a letter, so I'm just going to add it here.
And so the red signifies something the OCR is not clear on, is that correct?
Correct. And this document is finished.
The final step in our 508 process is called Final QC, Final Quality Control. Lucas is going to walk us through that. Lucas, tell us about Final QC.
Sure. First thing I'm going to do is make sure that the document is made accessible. What this does is it checks all of the tags to make sure that the screen reader is going to have no problems reading it. And it says that the checker found no problems in this document. Now you can see all of the text that's in the document here. It kind of gives you a bird's eye view with the reading order without the numbers that you see within the zones. Again, it makes sense, but it doesn't really help you as far as text searchability. It doesn't show you where on the page that it is, but just that the text is there. Now what's interesting, a lot of people don't realize this when you're doing text searchability, and specifically 508 compatibility, is what you're seeing here is not text. You're actually seeing a picture of text. The text you're seeing is a layer behind it. This is the actual text that you're reading. Now you'll see when I'm going to go do a word search, I'm going to do it on the word director, and you'll see it highlights the word director over here. It's not highlighting the word director on the image because that isn't a word, it's an image of the word. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this over. Now I'm going to move on down to the next page. Now here's a perfect example. This is a W2, and this shows why reading order is very important. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this page a little bit so you can see a little clearer. Now you can see the very first thing you see is a control number, okay? If a screen reader goes to read that, that's the first thing it's going to read. It's not going to make any sense. Now when you have a logical reading order set up, you have the first zone and the second zone set up on the bottom. The first thing it'll read is W2, wage, and tax statement. So now the person's able to know what type of form that they're reading, and then it'll jump up control number, and everything's going to make a logical reading order, and they know what type of form it is.
So Lucas, do you have a screen reader available that you can actually test this document on?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and play it for you now so you can hear what it sounds like.
Form W2 wage and tax statement, copy 1 for state, city, or local tax department, a control number 22,222 CMB number 15.
And again, it goes a little fast, but if you're able to follow along, you would hear that it read your W2 wages, tax, and statement first, and then it hopped up into that A control number.
So obviously a lot more understandable to somebody who can't see the document and has to to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to make sure it has a logical reading order so it makes the most amount of sense if you're not able to physically see the document. Now, and again, we have the same type of situation with here. We have a copy of a newspaper article. Again, screen readers normally read left to right, top and bottom. It's going to read the very top line all the way across as opposed to reading it in columns like you would with a newspaper. So we set up that logical reading order so it's able to read it correctly.
On the text document, can we run that through the screen reader too to make sure it played okay?
Absolutely. I'll show you how it'll
Commemorating 50 years and 50 hours, 50 filmmakers took to the streets in Surrey, Langley, White Rock, and Port Coquitlam last weekend to make a 5-minute
and you can see it
movie.
reading down just just like you would in a newspaper.
So Lucas, after you've looked at all the pages, you run it through Final QC, you've done the screen reader, is this document now complete? Is it now 508 compliant?
Yes, absolutely. This document is now 100% 508 compliant, and it's ready to be shipped off to the customer in any format they need.
So our 508 done and the information has been delivered to the client. In Final QC, we saw how that information could be used by a person with a disability. But what's important to note is the information is now available to all. We've made it accessible and retrievable. And to show us how that's done, Emily Whalen is going to play the part of our client today. Emily, how are you doing?
Good.
Now, in our document, and we have buried it in your file of thousands of other documents. I want to demonstrate right now how we would find something. So if I came up to you and said, pull the file from the ABC Corporation, that's all I know, how would you find that?
Basically, up here in the search menu, you're going to type in ABC. It'll immediately pull up some options for you. And here's ABC Corporation.
Open that up. Let's see if that's our document. Yes, it is. Well, now I want to show people how we can actually search within this document, do full text search. I know we had several pages in here, we had a newspaper article, but all I can remember is the headline said something about 50 years. Can you search for that and see if we can pull it up? Sure.
Again, you just want to go into the Find or Search Criteria, type in 50 years, and there it is. Came right up, and I can see, the highlighted text is what it has found. Now I want to look for something else within this same document. I know there's a W2 form, I think W-2. Can we search for that and see if we pull it up? Sure. Where we just placed the 50 years, clear that out, type in W-2, search, and there it is. Very good. Go back to the main screen with all those files, thousands of files, because let's say I can't remember the name of the company, but I do know I dealt with a John Taylor. His name was Taylor. Could you possibly search for that? Sure. Let's clear that out again. We'll bring up all of the files, type in John Taylor, immediately it'll bring it up. That's pretty easy to use and pretty fast. Yes. And that's how Vastec turns Section 508 regulations into an opportunity for your operation. Through the transformation, we've not only made the document usable for people with disabilities, we've also made the information accessible, searchable, and retrievable by all. Using tomorrow's technology for today's needs, we are Vastec. Service through the Department of Commerce's National Technical Information Service. For more information on how this process can help you, please contact NTIS.